At 6 in the morning in Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital territory, and the eyes of the world will zero in on events as they commence at Eagle Square, ushering in Bola Tinubu as the 16th president of Nigeria. I am Mike Okwoche, coming to you live from our studio in Abuja, and as the day progresses, I will be joining my colleagues Nifemi Oguntoye and Precious Amayo at Eagle Square, where the inaugural festival and festivities will climax with the transfer of power from one democratically elected president to another. Shortly, we will be bringing you images from Eagle Square, where in a matter of hours, the venue will be filled to capacity, as some will be privileged to witness firsthand one man's date with destiny and the realization of a dream he worked so hard for to actualize. Now, joining me live in the studio right now is Kayode Ladinde, the Executive News Editor. It's nice to have you join me this morning. Such a wonderful day. I know we have been working together all the while in the build-up to this day, but what do you make of the preparation, especially when it comes to the activities that were lined up, almost a week-long activities into this inauguration?
I think it's been quite it's quite an experience. The fact that even the Secretary to the Government of the Federation mentioned that they're looking forward to having this thing being legislated. So it's not a function of, whether one president leaves or the other. Yeah. Because, you know, we had, for the first time, we have 3 different documents being handed over to the incoming administration. And he confirmed that that has never happened before now. So by the time this thing is legislated, just like we know what happens in the United States when it's time for transfer of power, it's not something that you second guess. It's not something that you're not sure of what will happen from point A to point B. So if this is legislated, I think it's a noble idea for the fact that I think I will give kudos to the inauguration commission, the committee who had put this together, or you call them the Presidential Transition Council, headed by the SGF. It's been quite interesting, and to know that this is coming to a climax, it's something that, Nigerians will remember for a long time.
Now, you and I, we were monitoring the arrival of a lot of guests, world leaders from around the world yesterday. I wonder what you make of it. We understand that about 65 heads of world leaders will be present today at the Eagle Square.
But altogether, it's about 84. I think some have representatives and some heads of states are also coming. It's been quite interesting to know, and to also confirm from some dignitaries that they're the highest ever, and this gives credence to the fact that this particular election was quite credible. It's something that is acceptable to the international community, and it's something that has given the president-elect an idea that the world is waiting for him, to set the ball rolling. And in a couple of hours, or should I say a couple of hours, in a few hours, I think that title will change from president-elect to president, so it's quite interesting, and it's something that we should be happy for those of us who have been around to know, for those who had their doubts that this democratically elected government may not last long. We are celebrating 24 years.
Exactly.
And next year, counting. It will be, a silver jubilee. And trust me, we are not interested in going back to the military.
No, I think all Nigerians have moved on from the days of the possibility of having any military or any kind of distorted governance. But now let's talk about what Nigerians expect. There are lots of people who have the feeling and who have the knowledge that the president-elect is coming with a lot of capacity. And because of the things that Nigerians have been through over the decades and all of that, everyone is expecting a miracle when it comes to governance and standard of living.
By the way, maybe I should let people know that I'm not actually resident in Abuja. I'm resident in Lagos. Yeah. So we have a first-hand experience of what the president-elect stands for. And we won't be surprised if we have a whole lot of novel ideas. This is a man who has dreamt of this, who had worked towards this. And someone may want to remind us, okay, what about the outgoing president? Didn't he also dream of this? But he has a track record of smart, intelligent, competent team. And for some of us who are privy to how he's raising up that team, we won't be surprised to see sterling performance from most of these people that will come on board. So trust me, like we always say, team is the key word. It's not something that he's going to do alone. So we'll expect smart, intelligent people who can actually work with what we're talking about. We need to compete. We have so abundance of talents in this country. It's no longer news to know that these are things that we're doing in different parts of the world, in UK, in Canada. It's time to make Nigeria attractive to those people who are actually angrily and frustrating wise, left the country to come back.
All right, that's everyone looks forward to that. Now, the another issue is appointments. A lot of people, like you talked about the fact that he has a way of attracting, working with a team, a very competent team. Now, the first appointment he's going to make, a lot of Nigerians they'll be expecting that maybe today, especially like the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and say the National Security Advisor, or even a presidential spokesperson, and all of that. I wonder what you're making of all of these. A lot of names have been, sent out. They've been bandied, here and there.
Trust me, I know it's a complex country. It's a country where so much is being talked about balance, so much is being talked about inclusiveness. But you know what you and I stand for? We're interested in competence. We're interested in performance. Like someone would say, that who cares who made the car you're driving? What matters is the car functioning well.
Exactly.
Who cares who made the bottled water you're drinking? The most important thing is the water clean. But we can't actually ignore the idea of balance, the idea of inclusivity in governance. So I know a whole lot of people will talk about, irrespective of the decisions he makes, some regions, one region or two other regions will still cry foul. Yeah. But if there were the people, the question is, those that have represented our regions in the past years, what have they brought to the table? Have they become better? I think we need to start asking the right question.
I think that question is a very germane question at this time, where people say, even if you have a president from a state, how well off is that state because you have the president, or you had the president from there? It's not about the person, it's about what the person is doing or not doing. Exactly. But let's talk about the issue of national healing. Through the last election, there has been lots of division amongst Nigerians based on their affiliation to various political parties or even candidates and all of that. Now, we have a president-elect that is going to be president in just a few hours from now, and everyone expects that, well, he's going to move up towards healing the nation because he's going to be the father of the entire country, whether you supported him or not.
I hope I'm not sounding negative. Irrespective of any effort he makes, there will still be some who might actually bear this pain for a long time. But his effort at healing people, I'm sure one of the things you would expect, one of the ways he can heal people is come up with something interesting, something that will put paid to the sufferings of Nigerians, something that will make a lot of people forget that, am I in Nigeria? Whatever negativity, whatever negative brand that is out there, if he can change it, if people can be proud of where they are and the country they represent, trust me, there will be a whole lot of healing. However, I'm not that optimistic that there won't still be some critics. And it's also important for a democracy, but let it be constructive criticism.
Amazing. I wonder, anyway, of course, it's the prerogative of the president coming in, but when it comes to the areas of priority that he has to start or hit the ground running.
Let me not allow you finish. Security. Security.
Yeah.
Education. By the time you educate the people, you will hardly talk about some people killing for how much. When people have an understanding that every life is important. I'm a literature student, so each time I remember this famous book, The Gods Are Not to Blame.
Yeah, The Gods Are Not to Blame.
I remember the statement made by King Odewale. He said, let no one blame the gods, let no one blame the powers. If I did not allow myself to be used by the gods, I won't do this to my brother. In other words, he ended up killing his father. Until we have that understanding that Mike Okoche Though he's from Benue State, it's my brother. Let's stop this language, my brother, because it's from your state. We are brothers. We need to understand that what matters is there's only one race, and that's the human race. We need to understand that we need that orientation to know when we have the good education, the so-called your brother might be your biggest enemy. So why don't you just embrace people, see the potentials they have, and work on it, and that will really, help you a great deal.
All right. A lot of people expect that Nigeria, that's originally or naturally the leader of the African continent, has been sleeping all the while. The giant of Africa has been sleeping, but this is a time for the giant to rise. Do you feel this is actually the time for Nigeria to rise?
It is,
okay.
And there can't be a better time than now. It's time we'll see our population as an asset rather than a burden. At this time, we see our, the multi-ethnic dimension that we have as an asset. With time we look at the strategic position we occupy, not just on the map, even in the Committee of Nations, has something to work on. I'm not an advocate of too many children, but I'm just saying that we have what it is, we have what it takes to actually be not just the giant of Africa, but in the world. And this is very, very possible. Time and time again has proven that we have, inherent talents that can make it a difference.
Another unique thing about Nigeria is its youth. And in fact, not just Nigeria, but the African continent. They've got the highest number of young people. And Nigeria is the arrowhead of that population of young people. When it comes to driving an economy or driving a country with the capacity and the potentials of youth, where do you think the president should be, the new president coming in, should be looking at in the best way of using youth to the best of the country?
That's one of the interesting things that has happened during this week. I listened to the national youth leader of APC during that interesting lecture.
Dio Israel.
When Dio Israel spoke after the former president of Kenya spoke, I think 2 or 3 times before he came up. And he said that if you don't bring us to the table, we are going to build our woods and bring the chair to the table. And that's to let you know that the youths are ready, they're wired up. And it's something that the incoming president has continued to, go to the youth to let them know that I believe in you guys. I started quite early, and I know what I've achieved, even as a young person. So it's to send that message to the youths that enough of having that victim mentality, enough of feeling that you are being ostracized. It's something that you need to understand that you are not, in quotes, that young to make a difference. You're not that young to take the center stage. It is time for you to, to take the bull by the horn. So for me, irrespective of the promises of whether the outgoing government or the incoming government, the youth should know that just like they've taken over the entertainment industry, they've taken over the fintech, the IT industry, they will be looked for. It's not something that any government can stop. It's an army whose time has come. It is time for people to take youth seriously. It's to our own advantage. When I mean to our own advantage, I'm not sounding that old. It's to our own advantage to take them seriously. If you need your stuff, if you need your government to move forward, take youth very seriously. It's not just the numbers. There are quite a lot of them who are doing great stuff. And for those who have been thrown to the street, for those who have chosen to be on the street, it's time to let them know there is a better life outside, perpetrating violence here and there.
All right, from the report we are getting from the Eagle Square, people have started arriving, and it's going to be a square field to capacity today.
You know, we can't wait to join them.
No, of course we'll be there.
In fact, I think I should leave you behind. You know, I need to really go and join them.
But the point there is, when it comes to the colors, the glamour, the the ambience, what are you looking forward to today?
You know, we're there till like 10 p.m.
Oh yes,
I
exactly.
Think,
it was that
it's
late
looking
yesterday.
nice, and I think I should, give a kind of. They should watch out for TVC. They should watch out for the live feed that we'll be giving you from TVC. They should watch out for our production in terms of how the Eagle Square look like. Yeah. Just don't doubt yourself. You're still in Nigeria, and the kind of pictures you will get is right there at the Eagle Square in the Federal Capital Territory. Trust me, it's going to be a colorful day.
Amazing. All right, Kayode Ladede, thank you so much for coming. Of course, we'll be there together. You're going ahead of me, but I'll join you at Eagle Square eventually. Thank you very much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
You. All right. All right, now let's move ahead now, recapping all of the preparations so far. Many heads of state and leaders of delegation have been arriving through the night for this event. At Eagle Square, finishing touches have continued to be reworked to ensure a seamless transfer of power. Let's bring you this report and see.
Nigeria's democracy has always drawn attention across the world. But this epoch occasion takes the lead. It is the first time such a large number of heads of state and heads of delegation are attending a transition of government in Nigeria. For every president who arrived, a ceremonial guard of honor was mounted for them. From the president of Burundi, president of Rwanda, Ethiopian president, Tanzanian president, to the Chadian president of transition. Others are the presidents of Niger, Sao Tome and Principe, Congo-Brazzaville, and South Africa. They all were chaperoned by top government officials. Delegations from Qatar, led by their Minister of Foreign Affairs, France, led by the Minister Delegate for Development, Francophonie and International Partnerships, and India, led by its Defense Minister, also arrived. The significance of so many country representatives coming in for this event cannot be downplayed. The former governor of Borno State described it as a good omen for Nigeria.
This is the first inauguration ever in the history of this country. So many heads of states and government indicates their interest to be on the occasion, which is a very good signal for the country. It means that the acceptability of the president and the vice president-elect has been overwhelming.
All the presidents and heads of delegation will be hosted by the newly sworn-in president immediately after the oath of office are taken tomorrow. As the world celebrates Nigeria's democracy, the true reflection of this can only be felt if other African countries, especially those affected by military takeovers and crises, can take a cue from Nigeria and entrench democracy. Moya Thomas, TVC News, Abuja.
Events are expected to kick off at 10 a.m. with guests seated by 8:30 a.m. So what do we know about the man who will succeed Muhammadu Buhari in a matter of hours? Having played key roles in party politics since 1992, when he was the elected senator for Lagos West Senatorial District, it's no surprise that the president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu has attained the enviable position he got today, or he's getting today. In this report, TVC News senior political correspondent Ayodele Ozubaku examines the steady rise of Tinubu to national prominence in the Nigerian political scene.
In probably the most widely open presidential election in Nigeria since 1979, Tinubu pulled over 8 million votes to defeat 17 other candidates. His two closest opponents are former Vice President Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party and the former governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, of the Labour Party.
It doesn't distract from the fact that
before his emergence as the president-elect, Tinubu consistently played key roles in party politics since 1992, when he was elected the senator of Lagos West Senatorial District. After then, he was the governor of Lagos State for 8 years. Unlike his main opponents, including former governor of Kano State of the New Nigerian People's Party, NNPP, who came fourth in the 2023 polls, this was the first time Tinubu will run for office of the president at primary or general election stage.
Is hereby declared the winner and is returned.
His victory means that he took the prize on first attempt, just like Shehu Shagari, Olusegun Obasanjo, and Umaru Musa Yar'Adua before them.
I say thank you very much.
Yet, on many occasions between the time he declared his presidential bid and the day he collected his certificate of return, it seemed that the prize might elude him. Tinubu was the first member of the All Progressive Congress, APC, to announce his presidential bid. This was in January 2022, after a meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari at the presidential villa in Abuja. He led the formation of a mega political party with his Action Congress of Nigeria in the run to the 2015 general elections. The Congress for Progressive Change, CPC, and the All People's Party, ANPP, and the new PDP joined the ACN to form another party to confront the main ruling People's Democratic Party, PDP, in 2015 general election. By that action, he complimented President Buhari as the needed strategic catalyst of this great feat. At the moment, when others threatened to quit and actually quit, Tinubu doggedly stuck to the course. When the Alliance for Democracy, AD, ran into stormy weather and was hijacked by elements suspected to be funded by the government in power, Tinubu established a new party, the Action Congress of Nigeria. The epic turn from governing a single state to governing a country had begun. The ACN went on to win 6 states and secure the Southwest for the progressive cause. For more than 30 years, Tinubu built a network of allies across and outside the country. It is not accidental that he got the strongest support from the North during and after the APC presidential primaries and gathered the votes from the states that earned him victory at the polls. Ayodele Zubako, TVC News, Lagos.
All right, that is the life of the man who will be president for the next 4 years. Now, we have a guest in the studio who will be speaking with to give us an insight into what kind of presidency we'll be expecting. And I have with me in the studio Yusuf Baba, a policy analyst. It's nice to have you join me in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Good to be here.
Great. Now, a lot of Nigerians have confidence that the next level of governance is going to turn around Nigeria. Of course, there are other Nigerians who are generally skeptical about things because of experiences over the decades of how leadership has been on the African continent. But I wonder what you share, what you feel about a Tinubu presidency that's coming on board.
Thank you very much. I'll take it from one of the points you made about the level of frustration of Nigerians. To that extent, what I would call diminishing hope with regards to the expectation of our leaders to deliver good governance. Since return to democracy, we have been, making the progress of 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. And all the promises made by successive leaders, whether at national or subnational levels, have not been delivered. Largely so. Of course, there are some that have done so. So to that extent, there's a high level of expectation, more than ever in the history of Nigeria, on the presidency of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's highly contested elections, especially at the national level. And the at the point where Nigeria is at its most polarized time in the history of Nigeria. So it's a Herculean task for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The comforting, aspect for me and for a lot of Nigerians is the fact that, first of all, we have to embrace reality and move on. Elections have been done, a winner has been announced. While we are dealing with the issues, depending on what side of the divide you sit, we just have to have a leader. There is no vacuum. There shouldn't be vacuum in leadership. Antecedents, Mike, pedigree, are critical in, first of all, evaluating potentials and also managing expectations. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, right from his days, I heard the opening remarks and I heard a lot about, his emergence in 1992 as a senator.
Exactly.
But more importantly, for me, is the involvement of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the fight for the restoration of democracy. Very critical and important, without which we would not be here today, right? And then performance as governor of Lagos State from 1999 to 2007, and his critical contributions to the growth of Lagos and indeed to stabilizing and consolidating democracy in Nigeria. And if anything is used to determine the potential of somebody's performance, it's antecedents. That is why we present our CVs when we apply for jobs. That is why you have the rear view mirror, consideration when you want to think of what is coming, and even for projections. So the expectations are high, national and international, in terms of what Tinubu will bring to the table. Of course, we shouldn't also forget the fact or ignore the fact that he's coming also at a time that there is serious global and national economic challenges. He's going to take mantle of leadership with a myriad of issues. But I believe that before he signed up for this job, he knew the enormity of the task. He is a man that likes facing challenges, and he has demonstrated it by what? By delivering with a team. He's a talent spotter. He's a believer in Nigeria, and I believe with the right team, he will be able to do what a lot of people think he won't do. But a lot of us believe that we are having a positive expectation of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
It's quite good to know and have things from that perspective. However, one thing Nigerians are looking forward to now is the cabinet, the team that he's going to put together. Recall that in 2015, when incumbent president Muhammadu Buhari came on board, Nigerians were expecting that he was going to make appointments within days or just within weeks. And no one saw appointments until about 6 months and so on. But others are saying Tinubu would not be like that. But talk to us from the window of what you expect in the kind of team that he's going to put together.
First of all, it is comforting also to know that the outgoing president, Muhammadu Buhari, signed up a legislation that has become a law, that an incoming president must form a cabinet within a timeline, which is fantastic. I think that will put that to rest, this docility in trying to deal with critical issues of governance. But Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has a different personality type from the outgoing president. And in trying to decipher or to project what to expect from a leader, you try to decipher his personality type. Asiwaju is front-facing, very proactive, very pragmatic, as attested over time, as he has demonstrated over time. And therefore, what we expect is a president that will hit the ground running, a president that will take charge from the get-go. I believe that he has already formed an interim team, or let me say the first-line team, preparatory to other appointments. So I am very sure that the gentleman has in his pocket, the first-line team that is going to reel out to hit the ground running. He understands the enormity of the problems we have in this country. So I believe that we expect pragmaticness in terms of how he's going to... Talking about cabinet, if you go back to his acceptance speech, one of the key points I took out is that he said The youth, I hear you loud and clear. Together, we will chart the way forward. In another paragraph, he spoke about national healing and understanding the issues that we currently face. Also, if you look from antecedents, forming cabinet as governor of Lagos State, he had a diverse cabinet and people that helped him to govern Lagos. People from Southeast, people from different parts of the country. So I expect a diverse, team, and I expect not just a diverse team for the purpose of the provision of the Constitution. Don't forget that the Constitution has made it such that there should be balance, in appointment.
The federal character.
Federal character. But more than that, I will expect Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu to pick people of competence because that is who he is. He wants to work with the best, and that is why he delivers. I am a believer that when you see a leader, before you assess the leader, look at the team around him. Before you define your expectation and manage your expectations, look at the team around him. The team around the leader makes him who he is, or actually break him. So to that extent, we expect competent people, we expect meritocracy in this administration, because I believe that an Ashwaju that has come to this life that God has blessed so far has nothing else to do but to demonstrate and to prove to Nigerians that he is at this position to leave a mark and for his name to be written, in gold in history of Nigeria.
Well, his supporters, some of those who are close to him, have said that he will be hitting the ground running from day one.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to governance and standard of living and what Nigerians expect, what they are asking for is not necessarily too much. It's just basic things of life. But what area do you think that he should start from as an issue of priority, hitting the ground running?
My sequence of critical next steps. It's not going to be a walk in the park for Ashwaju, and it's going to be tougher on the team. He's going to drive that team to deliver. So anybody that is lobbying or that is expecting appointment should expect a tough 4 years ahead. And if you talk about critical priorities, the critical next steps, first is to address the issue of insecurity. According to the rating of Global Firepower Rating, Nigeria is fourth in the continent of Africa in terms of security capacity. Now, that tells you the kind of dire situation we are. We are behind Algeria, we are behind Egypt, while we are about 15 to 16% of the population of the continent, with the critical issues that have bedeviled this country in the last 16, 17 years. So security is critical to our territorial integrity, to our sovereignty, to our internal security, from which now you can deal with other issues. So the first thing is to address the issue of insecurity. While I'm at it, I dare say that some of this critical next step have to go pari passu. The second one is the issue of national healing, national unity, which has to go pari passu with this issue of security, because tempers are high, flared up. There's this what I call fear factor, Mike. The critical issue in Nigeria is the fear factor. Some people are wondering what is going to happen to us next. This issue of disconnection, disenchantment, has to be dealt with by Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He has to, within the first 1 to 2 weeks, demonstrate to Nigerians that, look, I am the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I'm not the president of a region. I'm not the president of the APC. I'm the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So that is very critical. The next one, of course, is to deal with the issue of the economy. We are in dire straits. The numbers are not looking good. Okay? We look at the statistics that is going to inherit a debt stock of over 77 trillion. A debt to GDP ratio about 23%. Look at the inflation. You look at the projections. IMF projected that Nigeria will grow at a rate of about 3.1% in this year, but by next year it's going to contract by 2-point-something%. We don't even know what is going to happen in the next 6 months, because the global geopolitics and other issues are still impacting on our national polity and what I call the self-inflicted injuries by the outgoing administration. So these critical priorities are very important. The next one is very important as well, and that's why I say some of these things have to go pari passu. The issue of the style of governance. The governance frameworks had to be leaner and more efficient, Mike. So Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has to make tough decisions for him to be able to deliver, because apart from the kitchen cabinet and the Federal Executive Council and all the appointments down the line, the critical contributors to the success or failure of any government is the civil service. We have a civil service that, with all due respect, is having much less to be desired for. So he has to also take the bull by the horn and deal with that recurring issue, right from the time of President Olusegun Obasanjo. President Obasanjo attempted, by laying the foundation of attempting to reform the civil or public service. And on, successive administrations have not been able to do that. This is a sore thumb that has to be addressed for any administration to be successful. So, to my mind, these are the 4 critical things that have to be done, albeit some of them have to go pari passu concurrently because of the situation we are in, and indeed some of them have dependencies with each other.
They are all connected one way or the other.
One way or the
now,
other.
let's talk about the issue of leadership of Nigeria, regional leadership. At independence, we saw Nigeria was at par with countries like India, with countries like Brazil, and a few other countries. However, 2-3 decades after that time, we saw how Brazil and India had gone far beyond Nigeria, leaving Nigeria behind. But now a lot of people feel that this is the time to come back to where we're supposed to be and play at that league, high up there. I wonder what it will take to bring Nigeria back to that level of reputation across the world.
It's going to take tough decisions by the president. But let me say this, Mike. We should not live in the illusion that the emergence of a president, or let me put it that way, let us not live with the illusion that what we need is a president that is a magician. A president that will just emerge and just, wave a wand and everything goes away. Governance, to my mind, I believe in the school of thought that governance and leadership is not a singular affair. The success of a country depends on the kind of leadership value chain you have. I keep on coming with this phrase that I call leadership value chain. So we should also understand that the success of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will depend on the leadership value chain. The governors, the legislators at the national and the subnational level, the civil service, I repeat civil service, civil service. Any nation that has a civil service that is not reformed the way it should be will have a leader that is a caged leader. There's little or nothing you can do when you have a civil service that is not in sync or in lockstep with the vision and the ideals and the values of the focal point leader. The focal point leader is what I call the president or the governor, those in the front. So it's going to be, a teamwork all the way within the framework of governance in Nigeria. Having said that, the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is one of the most powerful presidents in the world. And therefore, he has an opportunity, to be benevolent and to be, like I said, front-facing and result-oriented. This noble thought of idealism of running and catching up with the Brazils and the Indians, I'm sorry to bust your bubbles, it's not going to happen quick. It is easy to destroy, Mike, but it's very difficult to build.
More challenging to build.
We have to deal with these fundamental issues in Nigeria. But with the right leadership and the right mindset, and of course, while we are talking about those 4 points, there is a common denominator factor that will lead to the success of insecurity, of economy, of national healing, and whatnot, including fight against corruption. And that is value reorientation, Mike. Wow. In the way and manner we do things. Critical to the success. Yeah. So if we want to be like a Brazil or India, don't look at Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu alone. If Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu wants a critical legislation to be passed, and you have a parliament that is docile, or that is not thinking that way, you have a situation. If you have a judiciary that is not front-facing, that is not fair and just, and looking for the interests of Nigeria, looking out for the interests of Nigeria, you have a problem. And if you have you and I also not playing our roles in our various areas, whether it is public sector or private sector, we are living a dream that will not happen. So it is a concerted effort for a nation to move forward. Indeed, the critical leader should drive from the front and live by example so that it will impact, laterally and horizontally. That being said, it is a good thing for us to look and aspire to be where we were before. But it's not going to be an easy task, but indeed it is possible.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the issue of restructuring. Now, we recall in the last few years,
yes,
the word restructuring became so controversial because people say it meant different things to different people and all of that. But in the real sense of it, we saw how the debate went across the country. Some
yes,
confused, others convinced, and so on. But President Muhammadu Buhari signed some bills into law that offloaded some items on the exclusive legislative list into the concurrent list. Yes. Items like railways,
yes,
items like
power,
the correctional centers,
yes,
and so on, which a lot of persons saw that as the restructuring, that partial restructuring that people were talking about. Now, what do you see a Tinubu presidency doing when it comes to some kinds of reorganization of the kind of country, the structure of the country that we run?
Let me say this. I believe for Nigeria to go forward, I strongly believe that restructuring needs to take place. We need to look at the entire project called Nigeria, from a governance perspective, from a socio-economic perspective. Very important. And to that extent, the legislations that were passed and signed off to law, fantastic. What remains to be seen is how the leaders at the subnational deliver. I will use this opportunity to say that as citizens, we should not just look at the president. The big culprits that have been holding us back in the progress of the Nigerian project are the leaders at the subnational, with due respect. The governors have been underperforming over time. If you look at the performance beyond the scorecards, the interesting thing with Nigeria or anywhere is you can reel out scorecard PowerPoints, but the people that are feeling the brunt on the streets know whether you are performing or not. So the governors need to up their game. These new legislations will show us if governors will move away from being transactional and to be more strategic and more positively impactful. Now, talking about other aspects of restructuring, one of the key issues is to deal with the issue of national healing. And one of the takers will be some of these critical issues of restructuring that will be addressed, including our style of governance, which is too expensive, which is too cumbersome and inefficient. So I believe that because we know also from the records, Bola Tinubu had been a proponent of restructuring. Now, how he wants that done is what will be I'm very much interested to see that. But these are very critical things to be done in the next 1 year for him to be able to deliver, properly. We need a leaner, more efficient governance framework from the presidency down to the subnationals. We need meritocracy. We need efficiencies, in governance. And of course, with respect to the principles of separation of powers also, we have a legislature that needs to up its game for us to see that result. Because the executive will play its role, but unless the lawmaking and also the provisions of the Constitution, like Section 88 and Section 89 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, gives powers to the National Assembly to do the needful, providing checks and balances amongst other provisions of the Constitution, Bola Tinubu will make minimal impact. So it's going to have to be a holistic affair, but indeed restructuring is a critical thing to be looked into.
Amazing. All right, as we wrap up, let's talk about education, which a lot of people and even policy analysts like you would agree that education is the bane of any development. It's a foundation, the bedrock of any development. Yes. Recall that when Bola Tinubu, in his acceptance speech on the day that he was declared winner of the presidential election, education was one item he hammered on, spoke on very, very vividly and very, emphatically. He was saying that he was going to, bring some reforms. He was going to, bring on board issues of student credits, and then there wasn't going to be strikes anymore, and so on. And then also working on curriculum that would be relevant to the realities of Nigeria and all of that. Now, speak to us from that window. What kind of reform should be in the education sector that can transform Nigeria, especially for the next generation?
As Bola Tinubu has said during his campaign, and if we review the renewed hope, agenda in the strategy document, he was very clear with regards to how he intends to address the issue of education. And it has to go, side by side with his vision for the youth of Nigeria. When he said, I hear you loud and clear, you see the technology component, the policy component, the legislature component, all addressed in that renewed hope agenda. He spoke to some youth and to us in town hall meetings and told the youth of Nigeria and their parents how he intends to deal with some of the issues around education. For example, this recurring issue of strike by the lecturers, the lack of critical infrastructure in our education sector, the lack of funding, for the sector, and also to support parents and their children, to get good education. He came with some very creative ideas about funding, and the credit facilities and all that. So off the cuff, we have seen, dimensions of things that he's going to do to progress the sector, understanding that education is key to national development. Education is key to youth empowerment and youth development. And I like the idea about skills acquisition and skill imparting on the youth over and beyond the classroom education system.
Amazing. All right, we'll look forward to greater days ahead. Yusuf Baba, policy analyst, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Great.
We look forward to a better Nigeria.
Of course, that's what everyone's hoping. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, moving ahead now, Kenya's former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, says a dialogue with those in opposition is not a sign of weakness, but a need for engineering a trajectory of moving forward. The former president, delivering a presidential inauguration lecture, tasked the incoming government to take stock of the future he wants for Nigeria. TVC News' Sifon Essien covered the event and now reports.
The International Conference Center, Abuja, comes alive with the 2023 Presidential Inauguration Lecture. Leading the pack of dignitaries is President Muhammadu Buhari. Kenya's former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, mounts the rostrum to deliver the inaugural lecture. He begins by lamenting that despite years of independence from colonialism, African countries are yet to take their place among the Committee of Developed Countries.
Will Nigeria continue fighting for its place on the world stage with one hand tied behind its back? Or will it use this moment in time to embrace a brave new way of doing things and thereby unleashing the full might of this green giant?
Drawing extensively from the Kenyan experience under his leadership, Mr. Kenyatta stresses the importance of inclusive governance.
In the period from 2018 up to 2022, Kenya recorded some of its fastest development gains. It was the togetherness of the Kenyan people that allowed my administration to steer the country through the difficulties of COVID-19.
Speaking on religious tolerance and inclusion, the Sultan of Sokoto stresses that one of the ways to destroy a country is to show preference for one group over the other.
It has been said that the crown of a leader is his integrity, his stronghold is his impartiality, and his wealth is that of his people.
The Catholic Bishop of Sokoto shares a similar view, but with some nuances.
Nigeria is a complex country of great possibilities, great contradictions, and no country, no business, no family, no organization has a future if you don't figure out how to manage diversity.
The theme of the presidential inauguration lecture resonates all through the speeches delivered.
The United Nations needs Nigeria and strong African voices to rise up, speak on the global stage, and double down on the multilateral solutions that meet the immense challenges of our time.
Estimates show that the poorest 40% of the population consume just 3% of petrol. Fuel subsidies are killing the Nigerian economy, costing the economy of Nigeria $10 billion alone in 2022. We must create a platform for intergenerational engagement. We must introduce policies that deepens youth inclusion in governance.
Then comes the remarks by the Vice President-elect.
I can see the scales balancing the merits of democracy against those other forms of government. I can see plainly that an imperfect democracy is better than the most perfect dictatorship.
President Buhari brings the lecture to a close by acknowledging the challenges of governance, yet tasking the incoming administration on unity.
Today, we have embarked on a journey of introspection, enlightenment, and collective growth. We have delved deep into the theme of deepening democracy for development.
The presidential inauguration lecture, according to those in attendance, sets the agenda for the incoming administration. Sifon ACN, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, let's join our Lagos studio where Yuri Folari and Veronica Danikboy, my colleagues, are standing by. Hello, people. We're on the move and we'll take off again at 8:30. But what is the mood like ahead of this historic event today?
Well, good morning, Mike. Indeed, it's a real, I guess everybody is just excited that the day has come, the 29th of May, that everybody's been expecting. It is finally here. Vera and I'm sure we're honored to be part of this.
Absolutely, Yori.